Hey everyone, and welcome. Today we're diving deep into a topic that, let's be honest, probably feels more relevant than ever: burnout. It's a word we hear all the time, right? But what does it actually mean? What is it really doing to our minds and to our bodies? And, the most important question: what on earth can we do about it? Let's get into it.
So let me just ask you something. Have you ever had that feeling where you are just running on empty? Like your personal battery is at 0%, but no matter how much you sleep, no matter how many days you take off, you just can't seem to recharge. If that sounds even a little bit familiar, well, you're in the right place. Because that exact feeling, that's the heart of burnout.
And look, this isn't just about feeling a bit stressed out. The World Health Organization has an official take on this. They call burnout an occupational phenomenon. Now, the key words there are chronic workplace stress that has not been successfully managed. This is so important. It means burnout is a recognized condition, not some kind of personal failure.
Okay, so to really get our heads around this, we're going to go on a bit of a journey, broken down into 5 parts. We'll start with those first quiet signs, then we'll look at the downward spiral it can trigger. After that, we're going to reframe the whole problem with a really cool metaphor, then see what happens at the breaking point, and finally, we'll talk about forging a new path forward.
So where does it all start? Well, it usually creeps in really quietly, in a way that's super easy to just brush off, and that makes this first stage maybe the most deceptive of all.
It all kicks off with exhaustion, but we're not talking about your typical long day at the office kind of tired. No, this is a deep, bone-deep exhaustion. Physical, mental, and emotional. Stuff that used to be easy, that you could do on autopilot, suddenly feels like you're climbing a mountain. And here's the real telltale sign: rest doesn't help. The weekends come and go, but you never actually feel recharged.
And from that point, things can start to speed up. What begins as just feeling tired quickly, well, it morphs into something way deeper, and it starts to affect how we see ourselves. This is the downward spiral.
So right after that exhaustion sets in, stage 2 kicks in, and it's all about doubt and shame. That feeling of being constantly drained starts to chip away at your confidence. You start second-guessing everything. That little voice in your head, your inner critic, gets louder. You might start feeling like an imposter, just waiting for everyone to find out you're not as good as they think. So what was just being tired has now turned into a constant feeling of not being good enough.
But here's the part that is absolutely critical to understand. This downward spiral, it's not just a state of mind. It's not just in your head. It's physiological. Chronic stress literally, physically rewires your brain.
And this is where the hard science comes in. Neurological studies show that chronic stress actually makes your amygdala, that's your brain's fear and emotion center, get bigger. At the same time, it weakens the connection to your prefrontal cortex, which is basically the CEO of your brain responsible for control and rational thinking. So imagine your brain's alarm system is stuck in the on position and the brakes are getting weaker. It becomes physically harder to manage negative emotions, and get this, it can even speed up brain aging. It's a real biological vicious cycle.
Okay, so we're seeing the serious impact this has on a person, but what's really causing it? This brings us to a really brilliant way of thinking about the whole problem, and it shifts our focus away from the person and onto the environment they're stuck in.
The burnout researcher Christina Maslach came up with this amazing metaphor. Just think about it for a second. You would never blame a cucumber for turning into a pickle, right? Of course not. You'd look at the barrel of vinegar it's been sitting in. Well, the exact same logic applies to people in burnout. Instead of asking what's wrong with the person, we have to start analyzing the environment, the vinegar barrel.
And this just lays it out so clearly. We almost always focus on the cucumber, blaming things like an individual's perfectionism or their coping skills. But the real problem, the cause, is the vinegar, the work environment itself. And researchers have pinpointed 6 key factors that make up this toxic brine: a crushing workload, a lack of control over your own work, not enough reward or recognition, a poor sense of community, unfairness, and a big mismatch between your personal values and the company's.
So what happens when those environmental factors, the vinegar, just keep getting worse? Well, that downward spiral we talked about picks up speed, and it starts pushing people towards a real crisis. This is the breaking point.
So the journey goes on into stage 3, cynicism and detachment. All that enthusiasm you once had, it's replaced by frustration. You might start to distance yourself from your job, from your colleagues, just feeling numb. And that all leads to stage 4, a full-blown crisis. This is where a feeling of complete helplessness and despair can take over.
It's the point where burnout stops being a struggle you're managing and becomes a total collapse.
The consequences here are just staggering, not just for people, but for companies too. In the United States alone, burnout costs organizations up to $190 billion every single year. That's from things like healthcare spending and lost productivity. I mean, to put that in perspective, that's a number that's on par with the cost of cancer.
And if you want to see just how widespread this is, just look at the data from high-stress jobs like healthcare. This chart shows that a huge majority of medical residents report massive emotional exhaustion, a high degree of what's called depersonalization, that's that cynical, detached feeling, and a really low sense of personal accomplishment. This is not some isolated thing. It's a systemic crisis in so many professions.
And the physical toll is it's severe. We're talking about more than just brain changes. Chronic burnout is linked to a higher risk of coronary disease and type 2 diabetes. It hammers your immune system, and it's even been linked to telomere shortening, which is a scientific marker for accelerated biological aging. So yeah, this is not just a mental health thing. This is a full-body crisis.
So, after hearing all that grim news, you might be wondering, is there any hope? And the answer is absolutely. This final part of our journey is all about turning the tide. It's about how we can respond to stress, and even more importantly, how organizations can actually fix the problem.
Okay, so on an individual level, the way we choose to cope really matters. Research points to two main strategies. There's emotional suppression, basically bottling it all up and pretending you're fine. That is psychologically exhausting and actually makes that feeling of detachment worse. But then there's cognitive reevaluation. This is where you actively try to reinterpret a situation to change how you feel about it. And that is linked to a much greater sense of accomplishment and resilience.
But remember the vinegar? Here's the problem. So many corporate wellness programs, the yoga classes, the meditation apps, they fail because they are designed to fix the cucumber. They put all the responsibility for being resilient onto the individual without ever changing the stressful environment that's causing the problem in the first place.
So if fixing the individual doesn't work, what does? The real solution has to be systemic. It's about changing the vinegar. Instead of just focusing on making individual people more resilient, we need to build resilient teams. And that's built on 4 key pillars that directly attack the causes of burnout. Giving people autonomy so they have control. Building a real sense of community to fight unfairness and isolation. Creating structured rest and recovery to deal with insane workloads. And fostering self-awareness to align everyone's values. This is how you change the brine. Which really just leaves us with one last big question to think about. I want you to look around at your own job, your own team. Is it a pickle factory? And if it is, what's it going to take to finally change the brine?